Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as INEOS inflict more change at Manchester United. Dan Ashworth's gone, apparently he won't be replaced. This is a big transfer warning to Manchester United fans and to Ruben Amorim. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And are we descending into this uncertain world that we thought we were going to move away from, having brought INEOS in against some of our wills, but we thought that they would be a refreshing change. And are we now seeing chaos that they are having to backtrack on their own plans to save money? Also, in conflict with that, we've actually been linked with quite a few players this morning. We'll be talking about Lema, we'll be talking about Dibbling, we'll be talking about Davies, we'll be talking about Hernandez, a few other players to talk about as well, including an ex-player that could be heading back. So lots to talk about on the show this morning. But let's start off with the news coming in. Look, admittedly, some of these sources aren't amazing. Neil Custis in The Sun, a few other websites talking about it as well, that Manchester United will not be replacing Dan Ashworth. They will be abandoning the sporting director / director of football role. It would be incredible if that was to happen, considering we have spent many years before INEOS saying we needed a director of football. I remember the day when Ollie was in charge and it was announced that we were getting a director of football, and there were parties in the streets all over the world. Man United are finally going to get a director of football. And then they said, we have got a director of football, but they're already here, and his name's John Murtagh. Then John Murtagh got moved on and we actually recruited a director of football for the first time in our history. And his name was Dan Ashworth. He lasts 5 months. We sack him, and now the rumour is we're going to abandon the director of football role. This club ain't serious, in my opinion, if it's took us all this time to get a director of football that so many other clubs have got. And then we get one and we decide, no, we don't want one because we want to keep it in-house to the CEO and the technical director. We need a bloody director of football. Sporting director, director of football. We need a director of football. We need a director of football at Manchester United, like every other bloody club has one, because it's a very important role. People shouldn't be multitasking and people shouldn't be boxing up. This is how Manchester United should be run. And I am using the words of Sir Jim Radcliffe, who has actually spoken about the importance of a director of football. And my concern is, if we're not going to replace Dan Ashworth, why aren't we going to replace Dan Ashworth? When we literally publicised the enormity and importance of this role only a few months ago. And now we're saying we don't need one, potentially. That to me is just cost cutting. That's like, well, we've spent so much money already on sacking Ten Hag, recruiting Amorim, recruiting Ashworth, sacking Ashworth. We can't afford to go and get best in class anymore because best in class will be at another club and we'll have to pay compensation. We can't afford it. So I know, let's get Favel, Wilcox and Barada to absorb the job that Dan was doing. And that, my friends, is just United all over. Cost cutting, saving money, because we've messed up again, haven't we? So we're going to have to wait and see what happens here. But the ramifications of this on the transfer window will be massive, because if we're now saying that this structure that we've put in place, that they've, championed for ages, they want to, look, the great thing about this community is that we will talk about things on a deeper level that matter to this football club. Now, we've spent the summer debating whether Erik Ten Hag should have had the veto. The veto being, when he was given the job, he had a veto on transfers, which meant that they couldn't inflict a deal on him. They couldn't sell a player without his approval, and they couldn't buy a player without his approval. Now, INEOS wanted to remove that. They didn't remove it. And obviously, with Amorim, we're not sure. He said he's got a say on transfers, so we think that veto is still there. But we know from day one, INEOS wanted to build a recruitment / management structure that had control of recruitment. And that was public. They wanted to do that. Other clubs have done it. INEOS wanted to do it. Here we are. They've not even been here a year. And they've basically removed a fundamental part of that. So what are we now then? So who's in charge of transfers if we've not got Dan Ashworth? Is it Barada, who's a CEO? Is it Wilcox as a technical director? Is it Favel, who's not even full-time? Is it Amorim? like, it's a mess again. This is why you need a director of football. The CEO cannot be a fucking director of football. The CEO, I mean, that's like Richard Arnold or Ed Woodward being director of football. You can't have the CEO. Look, we've got a good CEO. He knows about football, but he can't be director of football. People need to understand what the director of football is. Jason Wilcox was putting the cones out at Southampton a year ago. He cannot be Man United's director of football. And Favell, who's probably the best qualified to do it, he's never had that role. When he was at Chelsea, there was 2 others above him who they oversubscribed at Chelsea. They had too many direct cooks doing the director of football. And he has experience in the RB group. I mean, this is just not the plan, is it, Sir Jim? This is a fucking mess. And you need to sort it out. And I don't think, as United fans, if they're not going to replace Ashworth, we can sit here and go, we're better off. We're not better off, you know, amalgamating one job into a CEO, technical director, and a part-timer. Like, it can't work like that. And also, it's in direct conflict to what we know you wanted. You wanted a coach who just coaches and a recruitment team that recruits. And now you've removed the fundamental element of that. So you're doing one of 2 things. It's falling apart, or you change your mind. And either of those 2 things don't look great. It's falling apart, so it's not working, or you've changed your mind, so you were wrong in the first place. Well, that makes me feel great as a United fan. I just love people who buy the football club when there was a better alternative, tell us they're the better alternative, and then get in and make countless errors and basically tell us we're actually making loads of mistakes. And that's the worrying thing at the moment, is that this whole INEOS-Glazer relationship that we spoke about last night was never the ideal. The debt stays, the Glazers stay, there's not a full sale. So that was never going to be that palatable for United fans. But the thing that would make it more appealing would be if INEOS came in and just kept throwing 180s. You know, they kept hitting the bullseye again. And what has actually happened is they're missing. So not only are they doing a deal with the Glazers that a lot of people don't really like, they're also missing the target with the things that they're trying to do. They've missed the target quite a lot on a lot of things. And that is a concern because the trust is ebbing away. This is definitely cost-cutting, says Jace. Well, look, we'll have to wait and see because, as I said, this story coming in this morning is coming in from multiple outlets, but the absence of a David Ornstein or a Fabrizio Romano is quite telling. But if we are not replacing Dan Ashworth, to me, this comes down to cost-cutting, which will then have a direct flow on our transfer ability in January and in the summer. And I can't get on board with bringing Amorim in and then not giving him money. I mean, we literally spent £200 million in the summer. If we've got no money to give to this manager, we are absolute morons. You do not bring in a manager with a style of the play that is so distinctive and a formation that is so distinctive and then ask him to use the shit that everybody else has bought over the last 10 years. There literally has to be hundreds of millions of pounds of budget to make this work with Amorim. And I'd say that to anybody. I don't care who it is. Like, I know we spent a lot of money over the last 10 years, but if we've ever needed to spend money, it's now. We absolutely have to spend money. This is a different formation. We've never played with a back 3 before. We've never done it in our history consistently. We are absolutely reinventing the wheel. We absolutely have to spend money. And if we haven't got it, we're screwed. We're basically screwed before he's even started. So Jay says, this is definitely cost-cutting. How on earth are we going to do a rebuild if we cannot afford to pay a director of football? Said it yesterday, things will get uglier. Patrick Lynch says, so the structure INEOS were bought in to implement is the very thing they abandon as what looks like a cost-cutting measure. What are they doing, says Patrick Lynch. King Zuma, welcome to the Members Club. I agree with Patrick. I mean, look, we need more information, but you know what? I'm just going to say this because we've got an amazing fan base and there's really passionate people and there are groups that have been set up to have the best interests of Man United fans, whether it's the Fan Forum, Manchester United Supporters Trust or anything else. But there is a deafening silence. There is a deafening silence. There was the protest a couple of weeks ago about the ticket prices, which is fantastic. But the Glazer issue hasn't disappeared. And we've been talking about this for a year. And a lot of people have been talking about this for a year. And I was when I did the Webby and O'Neill video with Webby, with Tony a few weeks ago, we were talking about it. I think we mentioned it on the video as well. Like, United fans are still very engaged on removing the Glazers. But unfortunately, the people with the power to do that have completely abandoned it. And it's a shame because they seem to have abandoned it because they want to trust INEOS. But we are getting a lot of evidence that they might not be up to the job. So this is our football club, and what was I said yesterday? We have had the worst start to a season since 1986. Well, Ten Hag's not here anymore. Amorim's took 4 points from 12. It's not his fault. Whose fault is it that we've had the worst start since 1986? Because if you want to blame it on Ten Hag, he left a while ago, and we've actually played 6 Premier League games since he left. We've only played 15 altogether. So over a third of our Premier League games, Ten Hag wasn't here for. So our worst ever start since 1986 pretty much falls on the owners, doesn't it? And we're sat here going, give him time, give him time. It's incredible to me. Denzel said it's Erik Ten Hag's fault. Well, of course it's not, mate. It's partially his fault, but we're still struggling. He's not been here for the last 6 Premier League games. He's not the CEO. He's gone. He's got his 15 million. He's gone. So why are we still failing? Why are we still staring down potentially losing at the weekend as well? Like this could get worse. And we're sat here as fans sort of like going, worst ever start since 1986, just sacked our director of football, huge debt, money hemorrhaging all over the place. We need to sell shit that will be wearing the shirt on Thursday, and God knows what we're going to do in the transfer window. And still, as a fan base, we're sat there going, yeah, well, let's give INEOS a little bit more time. And yeah, let's give INEOS a little bit more time, but what if it gets worse? Like, this is not... I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's because the Glazers are American and they've been messing the club up for 20 years, and Sir Jim's a local fan, and we're just going to give him forever. But there just seems to be a real silence and apathy towards what is actually happening at Manchester United. And what you cannot do anymore is blame it on Erik Ten Hag or blame it on Marcus Rashford. Because although they are issues at the club, potentially, the major issue is the people with the power to make the change. And they're just getting off with it at the moment. They're hiking your ticket prices. They want to knock your stadium down. They've left us in the debt. They've kept the debt. They're acquiring more debt. They're borrowing more money. But it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And I find it strange just how quiet it is around. It's almost like the fan base is defeated. When actually, about 18 months ago, there was a real momentum around the fan base for change. And it's just silence at the moment. And maybe that oppression is working. Many people said that the Glazers wanted to stay and bring somebody in as a front to protect them for the next 10 years. And at the moment, that's the way I look at it. The Glazers still own the vast majority of the football club, and they're in the background, ready to make more money out of it, putting a front in the way and going, let's crack on. Once the time frame for the NDA is up, I pray Ten Hag absolutely exposes everything and it reignites everything we fought against for years, says Jace. And we shouldn't be surprised about the INEOS PR silence around the club. Look at how they left the questions about Ten Hag's job in the summer. Complete silence. You know what, Patrick? You've hit 2. Are you going to go for a hat-trick? Absolutely, completely agree with this. I think INEOS's PR is crap. Always has been crap and needs to improve. And I think they are arrogant, and I think they know that, and I think they know best, and they're very selective in who they talk to because they think that everybody wants to wipe their arse. And the bottom line is they're not in tune with the fans. They've not integrated themselves with the fans at all. It's very, very authoritative and distant. You think about Sir Jim, you think about Sir David Brailsford, you think about Blanc, you think about Barada. Early days for very high up people in the football club, where's the communication? It's very standoffish, and I'm surprised by that. I'm very surprised by that. I thought it would be more hands-on, and it worries me because I think, are they being like that because they know they're sacking people, they know they're hiking ticket prices, they know they're knocking Old Trafford down? Are they keeping a distance from the fans because they know there's a raft of bad decisions to come where they need to be distanced because they're probably not going to be popular? So, look, it is going to be very interesting how it pans out. But the priority for me here is what happens on the pitch. And we've spent a lot of money replacing the manager, bringing a new manager in, sacking a director of football. And we know we don't have a lot of money. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, I look at it this morning, you've got this story coming about Tyler Dibbling at Southampton and how Man United and Chelsea want him, and Southampton have set a price of £21 million. That's a very reasonable price to get a very talented up-and-coming teenager. They're calling him the next Jack Grealish at Southampton for £21 million. It's a very, very, very enticing deal to do. And United, no doubt, are scouting him, much the same as we're scouting Rigg from Sunderland. But they will probably want 20 million as well. These players aren't quite ready. £20 million. Have United got the money to do that type of a deal? Because £20 million to us at the moment is significant and needs to go on players that need to go into the team. So how does this impact Manchester United? What's going on? We don't know because there is no communication. And one way, the summer was fantastic because nobody knew what was going on. Ornstein or Romano would say, here we go, or let's go. United are buying De Ligt or whatever, and it would happen and it would go, great, this is amazing. But on the other hand, where are we now? Ashworth sacked out of nowhere. Tomorrow, something else out of nowhere. But we don't know what the strategy is. And the thing about keeping fans in the dark is it works in some scenarios, but in others, where Manchester United, what is your bloody vision? Like, what, you cannot run Man United like a secret club. There has to be some level of communication. Like, what is your plan for the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years? What is your financial plan for the next 5 years? Are we able to go and spend money, or are we absolutely screwed now? And that can't come out through leaks. That's got to come out from communication. Like, we are grown-ups. We've been through 10 years of shit. Like, tell us what the situation is, because I'm quite excited by the likes of Dibbling and Rigg potentially coming to Manchester United for 20 million quid with potential. But you might want to loan them back to Southampton for a year or Sunderland for a year and see them grow, because you can't grow them in your own team. Have we got £20 million to do those sort of deals? I don't know that we would, because £20 million is significant. There's then a story coming out from Germany today that we want Konrad Laimer from Bayern Munich, which, when you think about Favel, really does fit, because Favel, Red Bull Group, RB Leipzig, Laimer, Rangnick, Laimer. There's a lot of connections between Laimer and Man United, and we should have bought Laimer 2 years ago. We should not have got rid of Ralf Rangnick, and Laimer would be playing for Manchester United. But we got rid of Rangnick and he went to Bayern. Maybe we are looking at him, but he's in contract. He's doing well at Bayern. How does that deal work? Where does that money come from? And that's where I am at the moment because I look at it and I go, we're being linked to players, and maybe we will buy those players. Maybe there's another loan. Maybe there's another way we can, manipulate things and get more money out and bring players into the club. I hope there is, because Amorim needs them. But on the other hand, I'm looking at these players we're being linked at and I'm going, I don't know. Also from Germany, Alphonso Davies is under pressure. Bayern Munich want him to sign a contract before the end of the month, because at the end of the month he can talk to Man United, he can talk to Real Madrid, he can talk to PSG. So there are things going on there. There's a story about Hernandez, the left back at AC Milan, out of Italy this morning. They're saying that Man United and Barada are a big fan of Hernandez, and Man United could get him next summer because he's only got a year left on his contract, and AC Milan will have to cash in if they can't get rid of him, but they want about £40 million even with a year left, which seems a lot. So there's a lot of stories out there that we can talk about, good stories, but how do we do it? How do we make this money? And Gabriel makes a great point. The new Lamar exists out there. The new Alphonso Davies exists out there. And that's what Favel has been brought in the club to do. I mean, are we just solely going to recruit younger players now? That's not going to help us in the short term. So there are a lot of questions at Man United at the moment. And I was reading an article yesterday. I mean, I read a lot, and I actually can't remember who it was, but it was one of the better journalists, and one of the more respectable journalists. And they were basically saying, when you look at Manchester United at the moment, and we were talking about this last night, but it's still worth repeating. When you look at Manchester United at the moment, a lot of what INEOS said has been proven to be incompetent. And you look at the situation where United have had their worst start in a league since 1986. They've given a manager a contract and sacked him in the space of 6 months. They spent £200 million on that manager in the summer. They brought another manager in from Sporting at a big cost. They've just sacked the director of football. A lot of what they told people has already come crashing down based on decisions that they made. They backed and then sacked a manager, but spent a lot of money on him. They took their director of football out of Newcastle at huge publicity and then have sacked him unceremoniously. So regardless of whether INEOS are going to make Man United a success, nobody can deny they are a big failure at the moment based upon their own statements. Not on speculation, their own actions have been proven to be incompetent. And I was reading that yesterday and I thought, you know what, that is a very blunt way of saying it. Nobody can sweep this under the carpet and pretend that this was part of the plan. We are actually quite clearly witnessing INEOS's downfall in relation to the targets they set. And I remember saying this back in January. They can't afford to slip up. They've done a deal with the devil, the Glazers, and a lot of people don't like that. So what they've got to do is hit the target, hit the target, hit the target, hit the target for the first 12 months so that they can build up a bit of goodwill. And I think they've missed. I think they've missed on a lot of things. But look, that's not a prediction. That's not an opinion. It's a fact. You wanted this managerial structure. You've sacked one of the key players in it, having only just brought him in. You did back this manager and you gave him a new contract and you gave him a load of money and you sacked him and replaced him with somebody else that you spent a lot of money on. And you've raised ticket prices and you want to knock Old Trafford down and the Glazers are still here and the debt's still here and it's the worst start we've ever had since 1986. There's a lot there and there's probably a lot more. And you look at it and you go, well, how do you turn this around? And they need some quick wins very, very quickly. And it's not on the pitch. That will help them a little bit, but they need some quick wins very, very quickly. And it's hard to see how that's going to happen if you're hearing, well, Dan Ashworth won't be replaced because that just looks like cost cutting. It looks like we've got to make do. And that was sort of how the Glazers failed at Man United. Hi, Mark. Have you heard about the new rising star in the academy? Says Mo. I think you're just talking shit. Seems that strategic review we had months ago was basically about sacking people and rising ticket prices. Absolute PR shambles, says Fairway 5. Well, look, because we're not getting a lot of information at the moment, what would you say are the big problems at United at the moment? And we'll read some of those out because we're not getting any information. We're not getting information put out by the club. Or Sir Jim or INEOS. So fans are quite right to speculate. And I've said this before, that strategic review from Sir David Brailsford sounded very exciting when it started in January and completed in May. It was an absolute shambles, like you say. And it was full of holes. And I would say Sir David Brailsford probably shouldn't be in a job anymore because he's got no knowledge of football. Like, he was part of the Nice project and it failed. And his strategic review failed. That review ended in May. We are now in December and it's unravelling. So that strategic review failed or was ignored. I mean, imagine in that strategic review, he said, we need to offload this player, this player, this player. Well, we didn't. So he's either not been listened to or it was wrong or it was 50-50 of both. And I would imagine that well, maybe Sir David Brailsford had a good relationship with Dan Ashworth, as was reported at the time. Well, he got that wrong as well. So it looks to me like Sir Jim Ratcliffe has bought a club, a vanity project because he did want Chelsea. I know he's a Man United fan, but he did want Chelsea. He didn't get Chelsea. He wanted half of Barcelona. He didn't get that. He got Man United, the club that he's a lifelong fan of. He gets that project, and then I think he talks about best in class. He talks about walking to the right decision instead of running to the wrong decision, which means taking your time on things. And actually, we haven't took our time on things. We've done a lot of things very, very quickly that have ended up being bad. And I also think that in buying Manchester United, he has put trust in people that are not best in class. And I don't think Sir David Brailsford should have been doing a strategic review on Manchester United Football Club in hindsight, because nothing out of that review has actually ended up being good. The only good things about Man United since INEOS have came in is the recruitment. And that would not be on Sir David Brailsford. I still believe the recruitment of Amorim and the players in the summer are the only positives. I think Amorim's a very exciting coach. I'm very happy with Mazraoui, De Ligt, Agate and Yoro, and we'll see on Xerxes. Apart from that, I don't think anything INEOS have done has been a success, and recruitment would be down to Barada, Ashworth, Wilcox. Ashworth's gone. The Old Trafford project, I think, is just a money-making exercise for a lot of people, which is why I think Gary Neville's involved in it, because obviously he's very good at building things in Manchester. The Dan Ashworth thing's been an absolute joke. The ticket price thing's been an absolute joke. Sacking of normal members of staff has been, ruthless. And they've not removed any of the Deadwood. So I just think at the moment it looks an absolute mess. I wouldn't go as far as saying INEOS out. I think they've got to change things around very, very quickly. And it's hard to see how that's going to happen when we're getting stories that Dan Ashworth won't be replaced and it looks like it's for, cost cutting. Interestingly, we've got a poll here. Should we replace Dan Ashworth? 74% of you say yes, 26% of you say no. I don't understand why people would say no to something like that. As a mere fan, I want a technical director, a sporting director, a head of youth development, a head of youth recruitment across the world. I want a CEO. I want a COO. I want everything. I want an elite team of people that work together. And people say too many cooks, but those jobs exist in other football clubs. It's about having the right people working together. I don't know why you wouldn't want a director of football, because that's sort of like saying, yeah, I'm up for cutting costs and getting less people to do more work. Like I want specialists. We're Manchester United. I want the best. So I want a director of football. The club is dying. The Glazers damaged us too much, and INEOS is in a mission impossible. Get Tom Cruise in. Massive debt and massive contracts, says Vita. Well, I've had a message in from James, who messages us sometimes, and he's very good on the financial side of stuff. And he said it a few times, to be fair. And he was talking about the removal of the Deadwood, and he was basically saying, and I don't know whether we've got an alternative to this from anybody who knows any different, but he was basically saying we do need to remove the Deadwood, absolutely, but you can't just do it without massively killing yourself with FFP. You cannot just take Anthony 2.5 years into what was probably a 5-year deal where you spent 80 million on him and he's on 200k a week. You can't just say piss off, because on your books is this huge loss, and also you've got to pay him off as well. So just removing Anthony from Manchester United in the January transfer window at a huge loss would probably put anywhere between 20 and 50 million pounds on our FFP hit. And people don't want to hear that, but it's probably cheaper to get rid of Rashford, because Rashford, you've just got to pay his wages. There is no transfer fee from 5 years ago. I mean, what's Rashford on? 300k a week, 1.2 million pounds a month. It's about 17 million a year, isn't it? So if you pay him off his contract, I mean, you're still talking 50 million, aren't you? So any player that you're thinking of getting rid of, you can't just sack them, because it's going to cost you 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 million pounds, and that's going to go on your financial fair play. So and James was saying this, the only way to get rid of a Casemiro or a Rashford or an Anthony is to just keep loaning them off. Therefore, they stay on the contract, they depreciate in value across the term of their contract for FFP purposes, and you're not paying the full wage. So financially, get your head around this. You've got Anthony. I don't know whether these are accurate, right? You've got Anthony, and you've spent 80 million pounds on him over a 5-year deal. After 2.5 years, you sell him for 10, and you have to cover that 10 by covering his wages, right? So basically, he just walks out the door for 0. But he doesn't walk out the door for zero because he's got 2.5 years left on an £80 million contract. So for financial fair play, they spread that out over 5 years, don't they? So it's 80 divided by 5, which is what's their 5 of in 80? I don't know, 15 million, something like that. So you've still got 30 million loss on your books if Anthony goes in January. So 30 million goes down on FFP as a loss. On the other hand, if you just loan him loads of times over the next 2.5 years, you don't get the 30 million loss on FFP. And actually, you might be able to subsidise some of his wages. So that is the financial way for us to get rid of this Deadwood, is to not take a massive hit on them and pay off their contract. It's to loan them off. And people get frustrated by that because they go, well, we're paying them money to go elsewhere. And that's why we won't do it. Because we're not in a position where we can sit here and watch Casemiro playing for Benfica or Anthony playing for Porto or, Luke Shaw sat on the injury table for Newcastle. We can't do that. So we're a bit screwed with Deadwood. Unless they're homegrown. If they're homegrown, you're laughing. But then do they want to get rid of homegrown players because we've got homegrown quotas? But homegrown players, there is no loss. If you can offload... Look, if you could offload Marcus Rashford for 40 million quid and somebody's willing to take his wage, you've just made 40 million quid. That's hard to do that because who's going to pay him 300 grand a week? But these are the problems that INEOS have to solve, and they can't solve them. They can sack 200 people who are easy to sack because their contracts allow it. But they can't, they've shown absolutely nothing, no ability to get rid of the real issues at Manchester United. Do staff's wages affect PSR? Why couldn't INEOS pay redundant staff wages for the year until club settles? Don't want to use their own cash, just ours, says Jake. Lee Geldart says, this is a circus, Mark. This isn't Manchester United anymore. Hasn't been for years. They bleed the fans dry. INEOS are just an extension of the Glazers, says Lee. Robert McCormack says, both Rigg and Dibbling will play for England. And Patrick Lynch says, you said it yourself, Mark. Amorim, like Ten Hag before him, is effectively the spokesperson for the club right now. That doesn't feel like support above him. They have removed one in Ashworth instead. I think that's a great point as well. I feel that Ten Hag at the end of last season was hung out to dry by INEOS as they apparently got their feet under the table. And then into the new season, they still stayed quiet. And then we brought Amorim in and they've still stayed quiet. They are obviously not interested in, communicating and helping out. They just want to leave it to the manager. INEOS still thinks they're running a club with the magnitude of Lille. Ignoring fans is a Glazer mistake that will hurt them later on, says Space Oddie. Nothing INEOS have done, says John, has made any sense since they came in. They actually haven't said what they're going to do with the actual football team to improve it. And Marlow FC says, hello, Mark. I get Scrooge vibes from Sir Jim. Let's hope he will be visited by some ghosts during Christmas. United needs heart and soul to get back to former glory, says Marlow. Every player here longer than 5 years needs to go, says Keel Robinson. And so we've paid £3 million for Ashworth, and if he goes to another club, we won't get any compensation for it. And Sir Jim has raised prices to £66. Waste of time, says Rohit. Once the time frame for the NDA is up, I would have done that one from Jace, haven't we, as well? Kath Phipps set the standard, a top quality, lovely human and completely professional, says Paul. Sadly, big business rarely attracts such qualities. Rest in peace, Kath. Lovely message there. And Zion says, Glazers made the perfect deal for them in every aspect. English front man, no critics on them. Actually, incredible how they won this completely, says Zion. Well, yeah, I mean, look, to be fair, you make a good point there that I'd never even thought. We know how biased the British press is. I don't think I've seen an anti-INEOS article by any journalist around Manchester United since they came in, and yet there's been multiple reasons why you might do it. So yeah, look, I've said this to you for years. In this country, if you've got a British passport, if you play shit, you'll get protected. And maybe it's the same with owners as well. Cape Town Boy, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much. And Tracy Taylor says, sorry, Mark. Sir Jim told the Glazers what they wanted to hear. Got the club. Get them all out and start again. And Kevin Adams says, I feel sorry for Ruben. Has been left to try and polish someone else's turd. Thank you very much. And Exo says, Sir Jim picked the safest option, buying only 25% of the club, and now him and INEOS are facing the consequences. And Andy Tootle says, Unless there's some master plan around the ongoing transfer strategy, the Ashworth sacking feels like a huge INEOS rug pull. Amorim needs the tools to succeed or he'll become disillusioned and the rot will once again set in. Well, the good positive thing about Amorim is that I don't think he's the sort of manager that will sit back and put up with it. He's very communicative. His relationship with the fans is fantastic because he speaks to us. And I think that in relation to that, that could be quite a positive for us because we want a manager that's open and honest. Now, if he's not getting that structure and support, then I would expect that to come out because he seems a little bit like a Rangnick to me in relation to that. We just had an update coming in, very interesting, from Plettigol. Manchester United would sell Rashford at the latest by the summer and would already be open to offers in the winter. The club acknowledge his development under Ruben Amorim, but consider him definitely not unsellable. One reason why a sale is being discussed, if he were to leave the club due to his very high salary, it would free up crucial points in the complicated FFP system, which in turn would give the Red Devils more room to manoeuvre in the transfer market. 27-year-old with a contract until 2028. So he's got 3.5 years left on his contract. Quick maths, that's about £50 million of wages. That's coming in from Plettigol. Right, okay, this is an interesting bit of breaking news. So let's just... I want to run a poll. On this because it's an interesting one and I want to just grab your thoughts on it. Nice when you get a little bit of breaking news later on in the show because it allows us to just change tact for a moment. So let's run a poll on this. Would you sell Rashford, yes or no? Because some wouldn't, some would. Well, look, first things first, in relation to what has been said there, Man United would sell Rashford at the latest by the summer and would already be open to offers in the winter. The club acknowledges development out under Amorim, but consider him definitely not unsellable. I mean, what development are we talking about under Amorim? He scored 2 goals against Everton. So did Xerxes. Rasmus scored 2 against Bodo Glimt. Like, surrounding those performances... Rashford came on against Arsenal, did next to nothing. I don't think he played that well against Ipswich. And, yeah, he's on 300 grand a week. Like, what development? I mean, this is what pisses me off about United. It's like Casemiro comes on and plays a good pass. Bruno comes on and scores a good goal, but we lose the game. Rashford scores 2 goals against Everton, and they're back. And then you go, we are paying Mo Salah wages to these players, 3 of them. We're paying Mo Salah wages to 3 players and we praise them for a good pass or a couple of goals against Everton. Like, do people not realise? I mean, Sir Jim should realise this. This is one thing I would expect him to realise. In fact, I'd be stunned if he doesn't realise this because money is obviously something he's been very successful with. If I am paying any player in a Premier League team 300k a week, I am not happy with a good pass or a couple of goals against Everton or a goal against Forest. I am expecting that player to be in a conversation with Cole Palmer and Mo Salah every week as one of the best players in the Premier League over the last 18 months. I am not expecting to be paying that amount of money for the odd goal against bottom half of the table teams. I want Mo Salah. I want Cole Palmer. That's what I want for 300k a week. So, first of all, let's just call shit there that there has been no development under Amorim that is significant to the wage that we pay. Not even close. So I'll call that out straight away. If we are meant to talk about Rashford's development under Amorim, he is not an 18-year-old from the youth setup. He is an established international footballer. Well, he's not anymore. On 300k a week. So there hasn't been any development. Like, what he did off the bench against Forest at the weekend was shit. And what he did off the bench against Arsenal on Wednesday night was shit. Now, he wasn't the only one, but it was shit for what we pay. So, absolutely sell him. Absolutely sell him. If there's anything true about this, absolutely sell him, because unlike Anthony, unlike Casemiro, if somebody is willing to take him, from a business point of view, it's absolutely good for a change. Like, Casemiro has got 18 months on his contract and we paid £60 million for him. So there is still a loss on him if we let him go any time in January or the summer, because there is still a residing transfer fee across his contract. And he's also on 350k a week, so there's going to be a big payoff. Same with Anthony. But with Rashford, as a homegrown player, there is no transfer fee that is flopped. He is homegrown. So like Scott McTominay, we didn't need to worry about, we paid £80 million for him 2 years ago. We paid nothing. It was pure profit. So Rashford, for me, is a little bit probably like Jadon Sancho. He may well go off and do well elsewhere. It feels like he needs a change mentally, doesn't it? And he might go off and do well somewhere else. And Player FC might start moaning, going, we never should have let him go. But actually, from a business point of view, from a player point of view, from his point of view, this just seems to make total sense. So I hope there's something in it, because we need to generate funds. And I still have hope that one day he might start scoring goals for Man United again, but I think we've been waiting for a very long time. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But you know what? When I read what Pletty-Goals put there, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true either. Like, I wouldn't say that Pletty-Goal, Florian Plettenberg, the journalist who has been very good around Manchester United, he does throw a lot of darts at the board and doesn't always hit a treble 20 or a 20 or even a bullseye. So he might be in a 2 here. It might not be true, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, financially, for Manchester United, selling Rashford would be massive for FFP, because it's pure profit and you get his wage off the wage bill. Also, he's a player that just isn't improving over a long period of time, and is also a player that probably needs a move himself, and is also a player that I think a lot of fans would not be bothered about if he went. So it's not like you're selling prime Roy Keane, is it? It's not like you're selling Ronaldo to Real Madrid to make 80 million quid. This is a deal that would make a lot of sense, but financially, from INEOS's point of view, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. And at the end of the day, what you know, they're hiking ticket prices, they're knocking Old Trafford down, they're sacking ordinary people. I mean, this is just nailed on to me. Absolutely nailed on. John says, let's be on. 94% of you would sell Rashford, by the way. I mean, that's a lot higher than I would have thought. I thought it might be like 70-30. John says, let's be honest, we didn't play amazing against Everton besides a couple of players. We just had 4 moments. It just masked the problem, says John. Well, basically, that's what Amorim said. Vinny says, there's Rashi obsession making more important than is. I don't know what that means. I think there are others who should leave before Rashford, says Marty92. I agree with you. I agree with you, Marty, actually. I think there is other players that I would get rid of before Rashford. Luke Shaw, because he's injury prone. Lindelof, Eriksson, because they've only got a year left on their contract. Harry Maguire, because I wouldn't be giving him a new one on 190k a week. Casemiro, because he's probably playing less than Rashford and he's on more than Rashford. So there are players I would get rid of before Rashford. Anthony as well. But there's a lot of players that I got rid of before McTominay and Wan-Bissaka, and that didn't stop them going. And sometimes you've got to, Marty, look at the financials. Rashford is a better deal for us than Casemiro and Anthony, because it will actually benefit our financial fair play system, whereas Anthony would harm it if we had to sell him at a loss. Sell Rashford for 20 million. Other club gives him 20 million to cover existing wages, then negotiate new wage. I mean, Keel, that's how low you could go. If Rashford's worth 60, you could let him go for 40 and say to the new club, the 20 million discount is to give him for wages. Like, you could, and you'd still make £40 million pure profit. The scary thing about financial fair play is you've got a player like Anthony who you're going to have to be loaning out. Otherwise, you're going to take a big FFP hit because of what we paid for him, and he's still got 2.5 years left on his contract. With Marcus Rashford, you could sell him for 10 million and make 10 million and remove his wage. And that sounds incredible because that 10 million is pure profit. And as long as you're covering off his wages for the other club, you'll make him 10 million profit tomorrow and his wages off. So this is the weird thing. This is what Chelsea have been doing, isn't it? With people like Conor Gallagher and everybody else. Is like you can make money on players on FFP that have come through your youth system, but you'll lose massive money on players that have flopped that you've bought. Natural Hazard said 10 million for Rashford. He's at least 30 million. Look, I don't want to get clipped out of context on that. What I'm saying is, I would say Rashford's worth 60 million, but there is a 300 grand a week wage. So if you wanted to sell Rashford and the only club that wanted him was AC Milan, and AC Milan said, we can't afford 60 million and to give him 300k a week. So you said to them, well, give us 30 then, and then use the other 30 for his wages. That's what I mean. Like, you can heavily discount the transfer fee because as long as you remove the wage, the transfer fee's profit, and then the wage is profit as soon as it's gone. So, you know, there was a time when Rashford was worth £100 million. If somebody said to me tomorrow, you can pocket £30 million and his wage is gone tomorrow, I'd think about it. Why wouldn't I think about it? £30 million into the club and that wage of what? £1.2 million a month gone straight away. I'd do it. On current form, I'd do it. People might say you're mad, but financially, why wouldn't you do it? And that 30 million that we get and the 30 million discount, they can use that towards his wages. That covers 2 years of his wages. So we'll have to wait and see, though. We'll have to wait and see. But look, how many other players have we got that we can do that with? Garnacho would be pure profit. Mainu would be pure profit. Obviously, we mentioned Rashford. There's not actually that many players we can do it with either. Well, look, somebody just said Dibling's better than Rashford. Well, there you go. There's your pathway to getting it. I've just got you the 30 million. Fans protesting the Glazer purchase saw this mess, says Tennyson. And please ask the 6% why they wouldn't sell him, Mark, says Richard. To be honest, I thought it'd be a lot higher than that, Richard. So, a sacrificial lamb and pure profit, 100% sell, says Rohil. 94% is why fans get no respect, says Robert. Oh, I knew you'd upset Robert. But Robert, you're an intelligent guy. We've met. We've had a drink together. Come on. You can't argue with what I've just said. He doesn't deserve to go ahead of an Anthony. But financially, it would be massive for the club to remove that wage and take that profit in. And you were a big fan of McTominay, but that was a good deal for the club as well. And when you are in the debt we're in, we got rid of James Garner because it was pure profit. Like, sometimes you've got to do something that makes sense. And if I'm looking at a team and I've got a player that's quite average, but I can make money on it, then in this current climate, you'd be stupid not to. Let's be honest. We've done that from John. Anyway, look, fantastic show. I'm back with you at 2 o'clock today because Beth's out in... I'm going to sound really... Oh, I'm just going to say it. Where is Victoria Plazen? I'm going to take a guess that it's in Austria. But I'm not 100% sure. So that's where they are. If they're in Austria, it's a lovely place to be at this time of the world, this time of the year. So they're out there. So I'm doing the 2 o'clock show, which is going to be the preview. It's in Czech Republic. There we go. Which is nice. Robert McCormack says, I'd sell Rashford if we bought better. No issue, not Player FC, but we need better because there's no one at the club who will be on 138 goals at 27. Yeah, but you know what, Robert? Wayne Rooney broke the goal record. I think he went 2 years too late. Like, there is a time when it's time to go. And you hold up a very, very, very good stat. But the player that was scoring those goals doesn't really exist anymore, does he? It's the same with Rooney. And I'm not comparing Rooney to Rashford, but towards the end, Rooney was not the player. and it was time to go. But, you know, that's where we are. Great points. Get your comments in if you weren't watching live. Please do subscribe to the channel, by the way. Bottom right-hand corner. Smash a like on the video. And what else was going to say? That was it. That was it. Fantastic show. Good comment. Look, last couple of shows have been brilliant. You sort of did an 8 o'clock show on a 10 a.m., so well done. Some of the comments were absolutely fantastic. Some of the conversations were great. Thank you, everybody. And I will speak to you at 2 o'clock. Although Vinny Red's just done a super chat. He says, sections of the fan base make Rashford seem more important. Just need to accept the club got outdone on contract negotiations. It doesn't reflect his value, says Vinny Red. Fair point. No, I mean, you know, for me, the Rashford debate's been going on for ages. And you've got Player FC and you've got Agenda. That's there. What me and Robert are talking about and everyone else is talking about is a business transaction to remove 350k a week in wages and take 20, 30, 40 million profit into the club as pure profit for a player that's been underperforming for over a year. I mean, it's an open goal. It's an absolute open goal. Apart from the fact, which club's going to do it? That's what I'm looking at. Is there a club out there that would do it? For me, it should be PSG. That's perfect. It's a status club. It's a brand club that would absolutely suit Rashford. There's talk of Arsenal, but I think PSG would be absolutely perfect. I think he could reignite his career the way Mason Greenwood has in a league where he would do well, but he'd also play Champions League football. I think PSG is perfect for Marcus Rashford, and he'd probably get his England career back on the way. But whether they do it or not, I don't know. What about Bayern Munich? Again, another interesting club that might look at it because he's not going to be expensive. It's going to be a deal that suits everybody, and it's about a deal that suits Rashford in a club that suits Rashford, where he can actually kick on and start playing well. And I think going out of the Premier League into a less intense league where you're still playing Champions League football would work. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. I'll speak to you at 2 o'clock. Stay safe, take care, speak to you soon.